Welcome back to another episode of the e-commerce practitioners. I'm your host Vikram, and today we have an amazing guest, David Williams, a very seasoned digital and e-commerce leader with an incredible track record of driving transformation across so many industries and business models. It's unbelievable, for how people can go from that level of breadth and depth, from high street fashion to global footwear brands to B2B medical supply giants. That is absolutely phenomenal. David has scaled e-commerce businesses internationally, led digital transformations, built high-performing teams, and implemented customer-centric strategies around powered by data and AI. So whether you're thinking about your next phase of digital growth, planning a transformation, or just love hearing about real-world execution stories, you're going to love this one. Let's dive right in. So David, would be great. Welcome to the e-commerce practitioners episode. First things first. What's more stressful, scaling a $150 million e-commerce business or helping a startup figure out how to even spell e-commerce correctly?
I think they're both they're both kind of stressful, but they're both kind of exciting as well. You just have to learn to adapt, don't you? It's I think each time if you're going into to one of those, you're doing a different sort of job, and you just got to be prepared and know there's going to be stress, but know there's exciting opportunities. You wouldn't be going in to do that if it wasn't an exciting time.
Absolutely.
I probably really enjoyed the starting up something new because I think always that
Right?
change transformation is always quite exciting.
That's amazing. So, jokes apart, just give us a short version of your how did your journey from selling books and music to high fashion to footwear and finally medical supplies. I mean, these are so much different things altogether.
I
So,
think,
walk us through that
yeah, I
journey.
think so. Yeah, I think you said I was well seasoned. I feel like a steak is meant to be cooked. No, yeah, I think I've always liked a new challenge, and I guess the consistent theme has been from those blue I'll tell you about them all, but is what where is there an opportunity to do something exciting, different, and learn and grow something, drive revenue, improve the customer experience, and just transform something. And I think that's probably the key theme I've had. So just I guess from a career perspective, I think you remember you asked me, and I started out in publishing books. For the opportunity, Amazon was just starting end of '99, end of the '90s, and went, "This is where it's going." It was clear. We were selling books to Amazon to sell on Amazon. So I went right. So
Yeah.
I moved to a book club association, BCA, and they had a lot of catalogs and moved those online. So that was really a D2C model. And again, that was very exciting. It was we were working with a small team and growing that business. I then moved to Charles Tyrwhitt. So that was the time when e-commerce really didn't begin, in my view, until about 2005. So as a properly
Mm.
2005, 2006, where suddenly everyone realized the platforms had got well enough, strong enough that you could do a little bit more than just put your catalog online. So I moved to Charles Tyrwhitt, and eventually that was the first step into international e-commerce, so running the UK market, growing a German market and US market, digital marketing, trading, web platforms. There's a lot of opportunities there to do that. And then again, the other opportunity after that. So I really enjoyed Charles Tyrwhitt, and it's a wonderful brand. I always talk wonderfully about it. Wish I'd stayed there a bit longer. I decided that I wanted to go to D2C model, which was brands selling direct.
Good to
And
consumer. Yeah.
Bowers and Wilkins was a luxury headphone brand. It was mainly marketing website with a community around it. I'd chosen help set up their web platform. But then I moved to Decker's Brands, and Decker's Brands is an American company. UGG was
Mm-hmm.
just exploding, very wholesale, wanted to drive a direct business, build a direct business in Europe for the UGG brand, Teva, and then eventually the Hoka running brand, which obviously is now as big as it's going to be 3 times as big as UGG. It's an amazing ascent there. And that was obviously it was almost like a startup, grow the business in Europe and set up a business in Europe, multiple markets, international, etc., working with wholesale. What's the mix of channels? And then over time there, spent time to Japan, where we saw Japan transformation because it had an outsourced
Interesting.
solution. So that was interesting. And then had an omni-channel role, overseeing integration, proper omni-channel. By that I mean merging the platforms in, so making sure retail was more integrated, and even saw retail for a bit. Start from going on here. Then I spent some time as a consultant. I've been there for 10 years and worked for companies like New Look, Hawes and Curtis, Aston of London. So very much in the fashion world, but I did a little more. And then the opportunity came probably it was around the time of COVID that there was B2B. I always thought I haven't done B2B, and it's an
So you
area I
had to
thought.
get your hands dirty with it. Yeah.
Well, I thought, look, it's an area of interest. Again, it's that area of transformation and opportunity. So I worked with DC Patel, medical supplies, and they had a number of businesses. But the supply, the GP surgeries, with the things
Yep.
that they need in their surgeries, gloves, syringes, equipment, blood, pressure machines, etc. So, and I've done that, and now obviously I've been there for 4 years. I'm now leaving, going back to consultancy for the short term.
That's
So
very
I've
interesting.
been everywhere. The consistency, as you can see, is I've moved into something different each time. I've not stayed and done more of the same.
I think change is the only constant, and that's the only way you learn
Can't change
and
your
grow as a
personality.
person. Yeah, of course, of course. Now you've been into B2C, D2C, B2B, and if you were to describe them as a person at a party, how would you describe these three individuals at a party?
Oh wow.
I thought let's give it a bit of a twist, if you can.
Oh, I'm bad at doing metaphors like that. I mean, look, the three I've worked in all three.
So, for example, the way I see it is B2B would be probably a very traditional kind of a person, still a little bit conservative approach, whereas B2C would be extremely modern,
Yeah,
slick.
I see what you mean. I think, yeah, you're right. B2B is definitely the traditionalist. It's all about quality, not particularly. It's all about speed and value and getting assured you're getting the right thing. So very dry, a
Yep.
very dry person, conservative, but has a little spark in them. They want to do something else.
Yes. Yes.
D2C is the flamboyant. I'm new in the room. Look at me. I'm the
Absolutely.
narcissist, and then B2C probably is that that person who's been around but very experienced and doing it. And I think the three models are pretty. They're relatively. I'd say B2C. I always think e-commerce is retail. That's more retailers who've gone online, so they know the customers. I mean, they really know customers. How do you get that customer? The D2C brand is that upstart. That upstart business isn't encumbered by legacy and it's not encumbered by politics. They're startup brands who do things well, or traditionally a catalog brand that's gone online. So they still, again, it's that, but they still have a flexibility to them um, but then they want to become B2C brands. I mean, look at Gymshark.
Yes,
And look what
absolutely.
happens, and then you're in the world of you're becoming more of a B2C. So and
Yes.
B2B is it's a really interesting area because it's hugely complex. I'll go into that a bit later, I'm sure, but it kind of has a bit of the others as well because it has manufacturers who want to sell direct, which
Correct.
is like
Correct.
D2C. So it's like, hey, I'm a brand, oh, I have a wholesale business who do distribution for me, and they offer the
Yes.
web, but I want to sell direct to customers, so I want to own that relationship. Same thing, and they also have kind of the retailers with sales teams and wholesale businesses who want to sell, in various ways. So it's just a slightly different, world. But obviously, we'll talk a bit, I'm sure, about how we do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now let's move on from that. And you've built and scaled a lot of digital commerce operations. Help us walk through, what were some of the key factors that helped you scale Decker's e-commerce business across EMEA and Japan to 150 million from where it was?
I think, and I would put this in. I don't want to be talking about having an American business that was ambitious and
Yep,
wanted to grow outside that market was great. So strong leadership with a clear vision, yeah,
of
and
course.
that unencumbered us at that time of doing that. They clearly wanted to grow the e-commerce business, and it was therefore the investment in people, process, and technology was a lot quicker and a lot more willing
Yeah.
to give you the ownership to do it.
Yeah.
At least
Much
clearly
more
most of the payback.
leeway and freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, a limit freedom. Like you're not going to get caught on the ROI is not going to be there the first year when you launch a website. Yeah,
Absolutely.
building a team.
Absolutely.
So I think that investment in people, process, and technology. I think the other thing which happened as I joined is choosing the right. And it's not always about the technology. Choosing the right platform for you to grow,
Yeah.
which at that time was Demandware. You know,
Yes.
it was
Yeah.
it was a SaaS product, very good for brands because it didn't have the complexity of huge SKU counts and integrations with retail, all those things. So it was really the right brand at the technology at the right time, and then to be able to build around that. Having a good plan, being collaborative at the beginning with other channels around the go-to-market plan for the new market. So having some flex there around how are you going to get around the fact that you're going into a new market and you have no idea what products to buy for
Yeah.
that market. So is there an acceptance that you're going to have an exit plan for the product and things like that. So let's move forward, and then also I worked as a regional business, having a strong global team who are able to help, know where to stay off, but know where to help and build. We couldn't have done it without them. But also allowing us to build a regional business off that as well with the central hub was really important to do that. And I think the other one with Japan is slightly different. So that was already already existing business, but it flatlined. It's a different point of maturity.
Mm-hmm.
Just needed to be replatformed. And again, my point of utilizing the core, really important. If you've got a core technology and process and ways of working, you'll get the values out of that. So look, it's a matter of doing it. And then it's about, this organic
Executing it.
growth. It's then it's like, what
Absolutely.
can you do differently?
Absolutely. Japan, if I understand, the cultural differences from EMEA would be quite significant. Were there any special factors that you had to consider while, defining your strategies or technology adoption or anything around that?
But it was much more about division. It was more collaborative and divisional role that I had at the time. I had a head ecom director in market who we employed to do it, who needed to come in. It was much more about influencing collaboration, influencing the head that this is the right thing to do because they already had a web platform. But I think there was a lot of going into the detail with them, understanding why they needed to change what they were doing, pointing out their manual processes, how it was making the teams less efficient. Efficiency was quite important there, and then
Yes.
it took a lot of discussions. Once we persuaded the head of the market to do it, then they threw themselves into the transformation that was needed to be done. It was good. It's a very complicated market because of
Yes.
because especially at the time, cash on delivery was still huge, but proper cash on delivery. This was properly giving cash over, and that doesn't work very well with enterprise platforms.
Yeah, that's a very tricky space actually, cash on delivery. I know for a very fact, in India, one of the biggest payment method actually is still cash on delivery. The digital payments still have a very small portion of the online orders. It's still a majority of them. Anyways, coming back to
The
this
good
now.
thing about there is returns are low because culturally, returning you're not supposed to be rude.
Yeah, I think that may be applicable for Japan, but definitely not for India.
Uh,
Okay, so Deckers was still a good business that was already there. Coming to some brands, new brands like Hoka Online, what helped you grow them from ground up? What strategies did you apply for building those up from literally ground zero?
and again, yeah, so that's really interesting because you look at Hoka now and it's huge and it's
Yes,
the fastest growing footwear brand along with On shoes. They're just taking market share off New Balance and Nike and at the time, I think it was a very nascent business. You have to, as you said, from the ground up. It was first of all, it was a very omni-channel approach. So working very
correct.
closely with the head of Hoka for Europe, who was a great guy, Stefan, and looking about how what's our channel mix per market? Where are the opportunities there to help grow the business, and where does D2C fit in it? Because there wasn't already a bit of a Hoka business there, but it had been it was a purchased brand. It wasn't a brand new one, so I understand the place in the market, and then looking at ways. What's the difference between Hoka versus the way of doing UGG? And ultimately, it was about the product. It's a technical product. You have a running community that's running, a trail running community or a road running community who just love that sort of product. And so it's telling the story, getting a human aspect to it. We had this thing called Humans at Hoka, which just really helped tell the story. And it was about, at that time, building social. That was when social was starting to kick off. So using that as a leverage there. Obviously, we had the platforms in place. Then it was just about getting the right product to present it on the customers online and delivering a D2C proposition because there was an element of probably a number of online players already in the market selling Hoka, and it's
When was this? When was this? When was
this
the
was
Hoka?
probably 2016 when we launched it,
Yep,
2015, 2016. So very different. And then
very
it was
different
just on
landscape.
growing from there. And then the final thing with
D2C,
Hoka, go on.
sorry, I was about to say 2016 D2C wasn't still a big thing at the moment. I mean, it was still overall D2C space in itself was a very nascent element, right?
Yeah, it was quite nascent, so you were always a smaller part of the overall business. And my view has
Yes,
always been that a wholesale, if you're a business that you're going to get the mass volume through wholesale. I was never a you saw my article. I just linked to LinkedIn, but I was talking about how to
yeah,
help wholesale. Your job on that platform is your job on your website is to present the brand. And if they decide to buy from you direct, that's fine. But you're just going to help amplify as much as you can because
absolutely.
they might go and buy from a runner's need, but they'll probably come back and buy their repeat product. The other thing with Hoka was just that element of repeat purchase of products, really getting on top of when was the right time to try and sell another pair of Hokas to a pair of Cliftons to these products, and then also dovetailing onto some of the products that just seemed to explode. There was a Speed Goat, which was a great shoe. Just helped accelerate the business.
So, I mean, running shoe is basically a low frequency product, right? You're not going to buy two shoes every month, a shoe every month. How did you figure that out, and how did you? What were the strategies that you used to increase that purchase frequency for that repeat
I think,
purchase?
well, I think we had a partner, and I think it was more two at the time we were using. We were just looking into our, propensity modeling and looking into RFM and seeing what was happening, but really digging in and working with what they were
Hmm.
buying. So ARG, the assumption, using assumptions. So ARG was like always this assumption that, hey, if you sell them an UGG boot, they're going to buy an UGG slipper next, and blah blah blah. But actually, people just kept buying another UGG boot, different color. And it's just challenging
Interesting.
assumptions, and then looking at frequency when it was done, separating out gift from that. Hoka was more about, you'd start to see a much shorter timeline. It's only 3-4 months for the biggest advocates. So it's just about
Wow.
using to be using, because they run. You're talking about shoes that people run like they'd run 100 miles in them, like 150 miles in them a week or something. Across trails and mountains. It's just 3 months, 3-4, and it's not the quality of the shoes. They just like to get a new shoe in, because they'll have run
Yeah.
thousands of miles. So you'd look at the frequency and just drive some programs around them. It was quite nascent then. This is not the world of hyper personalization. This was like 9-10 years ago.
Yeah. And what were the other elements that helped you grow Hoka that much? I mean, omni-channel element, bringing the partners on board, focusing on the propensity modeling. Were there any other elements that you picked up on that journey? Growing up anything from zero to this stage is huge.
I think that was the time when we started to look at exclusivity around the brand as well. So there was partnerships with certain famous runners. Obviously sports marketing was huge, so that helped there. But actually, from
Yes.
a ranging perspective, we started to look at what products could we exclusively sell on the Hoka website, whether it was early release. We even had a massive. Well, the other thing you have there, I guess, within a DC brand, a brand selling direct, is wholesalers are inherently conservative because they're buying you, but they're buying Saucony and they're buying Brooks and they're buying Nike and they're buying,
Of
and so they're
course, they're
not
buying
buying
all brands.
the full range, the full colorways. They're
Yes.
not buying wide shoes. So we had a massive wide shoe. People wanted wider shoes, so we said, well, we'll take those and we'll do the extreme ranges, and it allowed us just to have a little bit of a USP there that helps us grow. It's really important.
Interesting. Okay, now moving on to some more exciting stuff. Digital transformation is a word that everybody just throws around like a magic spell. But when you walk into a business, what's the first reality check you usually have to deliver when we talk about digital transformation?
Yeah, in my view, digital transformation happens all the time, but I think you're right. I think it's when you need to accelerate digital transformation. So I talk about there being like three tipping points. And the first one is if you go into a nascent business, a B2B, yeah. The
Yeah.
first challenge you get there is the justification of the investment, because
Yes.
it's an investment that there's got to be a bit of a leap of faith, yeah, because
Yep.
you've got to drive, where you're going to show the incrementality, where's it going to drive return. But the other thing as well, if you're going into a business that already has an analog business that has channels already, is you've got channel shift. So what are the things that you're going to get from doing that, and what are the decisions you're going to make to do that? I think that's that when you go into a business begin, that's the first one. As a business gets bigger, the next thing with digital transformation, we normally have to go in and make an investment, is when a business gets to a certain size and you get channel conflict, and then the business starts thinking, right, you've done that siloed digital e-commerce thing with your group for a while. How do we transform the business to be a bit more omni-channel? And I think that's another situation where you get transformation challenges, like your digital marketing. So you get more sophisticated in digital marketing. So what are you going to do there? How are you going to have more partnerships? It's just understanding the platform.
Yep.
You need a better CRM platform. You need to be able to upsell and cross sell better, but you need to, there's a lot of variances there, and that's probably more about for a digital transformation. That's challenging existing roles and a bit more of a mindset shift. So you can't work in a
Yeah.
silo anymore. And
Really.
then the last one for me, which is where I think a lot of the B2C businesses are at, is that final bit of where you're not quite hitting the numbers, and you need to do something digital transformation, which I think a lot of businesses are at the moment, and I think and everyone's thinking about AI, and it's revisiting the technology you've got. Have you got the right teams in place? Have you got too many technologies? I would guarantee you that's the time you've got too many technologies, and you don't know what's driving the ROI, and you're like, it's there, and you're not sure whether true incrementality is. You need to go back and revisit it all, look it all up. That's where AI comes in, I think, where it comes into. We'll talk about it later, I'm
Yeah.
sure. But
So recently we encountered a business, and this is
yeah,
something that I also had a chat with somebody at B2B Online recently. where they were supposed to go into a digital transformation, but they're literally living quarter to quarter. So if a quarter did not do well, the project was commissioned to start next month. They completely stalled the project until end of this year.
And
How do you think
yeah, go on.
how do you think that plays out in the overall transformation of the business? Because that's just not going to help.
That's normally that point of that justification of an investment, because it's a different way of
Yes,
looking at it. Yeah,
correct.
because they're traditionally sales organizations, yeah, with
Yes.
quarterly targets, and that and and I guess sometimes not always as strategic as sometimes.
Yeah. Do you think
Business
that's
model is
the
quite
right
tough, and
approach?
it's just one of those things. You just have to. It just means it takes longer.
Yeah. So, but do you think that's the right approach of living quarter by quarter when looking at an investment like this? What is your
No,
opinion on
not
that?
if it's no. I don't. I mean, look, I think it's always that balance between, it's tough at the moment for businesses. The
Of
businesses
course.
are struggling, yeah. But I think it's that element of how can you. The question is, what is the strategy? If the strategy is just hit more numbers next year and you haven't got a tactical playbook to do it, then you've got problems. And that might be
Yeah.
that business. I think you need to have that from the top down CEO to say that whilst we want you to hit your targets this quarter, we need to deliver this digital transformation because we know the longer term benefits are going to need to be there.
Absolutely.
And I think that's sometimes where it's at. But it depends what that project is. If that's to build in a new to to put in a brand new channel, you can understand that
Yeah.
they do push back on it.
Of course.
Sometimes it
And just
takes a while, and I think that's where B2B's at the moment. It feels like from the conversations.
it is. It is. I think absolutely, absolutely. On a lighter note, what do you think is harder to upgrade? Old technology or old mindsets?
I think old mindsets,
Yeah.
because the technology bit is it cannot because you can because the because the technologies are it should be getting easier now with technology. And you like me have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Longer time. We know what it was like years ago when you're trying to get an order management system and separate, and it was all on premise and every. And there's a lot more.
Absolutely.
You got APIs now. You got MuleSoft. You got the layers. You can do all that stuff in between. So there's a lot more you can do if you do it correct. Getting experts in to help you. I think so. I think the technologies. I think it's the mindset shift that. But we have an ERP that does. Can't we do it all through the ERP? And you're like, no, you can't do it all through the ERP.
Yeah.
The ERP is just enterprise record, whatever it stands for,
Yeah.
enterprise record.
Yeah.
And it isn't. There's more you can do out there. That's a mindset shift. I
Yeah.
think
No, I
sometimes there's
completely
an
agree.
element in IT that there's IT can be tutorial that we've always done on legacy platforms, and hey, moving to the cloud is like a great thing, but we don't. And it's getting that. That's where you get experts in. So you
Absolutely.
get people in to try and
Absolutely.
help you, and then you have to it's mindset, and you have to think about what kind of roles do you need in the future. And the problem is if companies don't do it, you've got Gen Alphas coming in who all they know is everything is digital. So they're not going to want to work. They're not going to wait for a salesperson to call them up. And then the sales team are going, well, I can't make my sales because I can't get through to someone on the phone because they're not doing everything on the phone anymore. And it's
Yeah.
just a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where do you usually recommend businesses should start if they want to drive meaningful digital change? What should be the starting point for businesses like this? And I think what you made a very good point that justification is a very important element, justification of that investment. But
Yeah,
beyond that, and a lot of times mindset shift is a very critical element as well. But
I
once you've
think.
crossed that,
Yeah,
where you think they should start?
I think you start. I think before you even do it, there's a lot of discovery and discussion around what. So well, look at the
Absolutely.
macro environment of where you're at. What's happening in your industry? We know what's happening. Digital natives, all that stuff. You can get that coming out of your ears from Forrester and Gartner and everyone.
Yeah.
And Harvard Business School, but that's important to know. That stuff is qualified. Yeah, that is happening. And you have to be mindful of that. Then, what's happening in your industry? It's really important to see what are your competitors doing. What if I think of outside of the healthcare distribution, I think of what's happening in healthcare is looking to do everything digital. For example,
Yes.
everything's there. What are your competitors doing? But also then then listen to your customers. What are your customers telling you? And what are the customers who are not buying with you anymore? Why are they not buying with you anymore? And I think once you get all that information, it starts to tell you what's there. And then I think you need to revisit what your USP is. what is the thing that you can offer that is the best thing that you do, and where's the process and technology you need to help it. So I think those are the things that you need to get across to customers. Those are really important things. And then it's all about building the story about why you would invest and et cetera, et cetera.
I think
So I
those
think
are very
everyone knows
valid points to start.
it's there, and everyone knows that AI is going to be there, and everyone's going to do things differently, and everything is going to be more digital, but they don't always know how. So I think you just need to. I think also you do need to know what your unique proposition is, and most of the time, by the
Absolutely.
way, it's not customized technology that everyone's got.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. Now, you've scaled businesses internationally, EMEA, Japan, US market entries. Which was the trickiest market to crack? And did you ever have one of those, what have we done kind of a thing looking back? Oh shit, what have we done?
What have we done? The trickiest market, the the trickiest market. We talked about Japan. That was really tricky.
Japan.
Really tricky. I think I tell you what, the interesting ones are sometimes the markets that you choose to go into and the ones you don't go into. So actually, not the tricky, the one I think the oh shit moment for me, excuse my language, was when we, and sometimes there's a what do you call trade off, yeah. So
Yes.
doing Netherlands, we were like, look, we got a Dutch subsidiary for this was the UGG brand. We need to launch before Christmas. We need to get that in. We hadn't got our payment service provider properly in at the moment. We had a US one. And I was
Hmm.
like, we need Ideal. I was like, Ideal, look, I know it's big over there. I didn't realize how much that would affect we didn't hit the numbers because we didn't have Ideal, which is the Dutch, direct from bank account payment platform that they've got. And I wish I'd waited a little bit longer because it was a lot of effort. Didn't hit the numbers. And I think if we just pushed back and said we've done that. The other one I think this is really pertinent for now was Russia. I was trying to sell into Russia and having looked at that market, and the US is turning into it now. It's that market that's got great opportunity. They really like our product. It's a fashion product,
But
big with the Russian oligarch wives and everything, and a bit like American now. But it was tricky, and they
yeah,
changed the import levels. The pricing was all over the place. It was obviously it's Russia, and I think we decided not. We said as much as we want to do it, we'll leave it to the distributor, and it was the right thing to do because then nothing started
yeah,
going there after 2019, 2020, and it was the right thing to do. So I think it's knowing, yeah, those are things. So you really have to think about the markets before you enter them and understand them. And the other thing with Russia was the lack of control from delivery perspective is really tough. Now, also you have companies like Globally and eShop World and these guys now doing these things across border, Global. It was that was one we decided not to do. So I think
brilliant.
that the mistakes can be if you're not ready for a market, don't do it. Yeah,
Don't do it.
focus on the
How do you
markets.
find that readiness? Do a self audit.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of self audit, a bit of peer discussion. I mean, understanding from down through the cost. What's the cost to serve elements to it? Understanding how the distributor market model was working there, what they were buying. It was just you just have to do a bit of self analysis. Certainly for us in that case.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now, moving on to, of course, doing all of this stuff sounds very exciting, but all of this requires people and not just an individual, but a proper team. So, how, in your experience, what would separate out an average digital team from an exceptional one?
Look, I think it comes from. I have a kind of like I have this thing which I call focal, which is the way I work, which is like I call it for focal is focus on customer. So that person's got to be really thinking. They've got to be customer centric when you interview them and understand what they're doing. Open to change, so not being close
Hmm.
minded and being like this is all about me. This is open to being flexible. Commerciality is super important. You've got to have a commercial view. Agile and L for learning. So focal. So learn, and then the learning for me is you've got to be constantly learning in e-commerce and digital. And if you get people with that curious mindset, with the skill sets to do those things, you could build them in. And then the other thing, obviously, so that means that they collaborate and see collaboration as well. But being able to collaborate and understand that within with each other. So you get some sales, if you go to traditional sales teams, very competitive, probably a bit mistrustful.
Yes, yes,
This is
yes.
not that. You have to be open to these things, but also that learning thing is really important. You've got to know what's coming and thinking about how you're going to assess what you do. And then the final thing I think with those for me is to get those teams is I guess it's being open actually is I use that as well. You need to be able to collaborate with the rest of the business because if you go back to that point of channel conflict, you can't be a silo business. You've got to be able to
Absolutely.
talk. You've got to be able to talk. Don't use acronyms when you're talking to the finance manager. Try and learn how to talk to them, buying and merchandising, understand if they're also supplying for a retail store, that you've got to think about how you're, you know, how you discuss with them and get the best out of them to get the right products online. So it's just
Now,
those are
all of
important
this
things I
is
think we become team. I mean,
all of
look,
these are
it's a
absolutely
given. It's a given of specialisms that you need there. You need someone who's really shit on digital
of
marketing. You need
course.
someone who's really good on trading, but they need to be able to work as a team together.
Absolutely. Now, all of these are excellent qualities and absolutely required, but a lot of times these are very difficult to gauge just in the interview.
Yeah,
And it takes a while before you find out the true nature of the individuals and the team dynamics. How do you handle those kind of scenarios where your expectations are quite not aligned, or the person who's joined, his skill set is not completely aligned with what your expectations are? How do you
I
handle
think.
those kind of complicated situations?
Yeah, I haven't had too many of those. I mean, I've had some,
That's
and I
very
think
good.
it's. I mean, yeah, but equally, there are times when you have those don't work out, and it's
Absolutely.
thank you, and I think they've got to be. I think there's just an open conversations with people around where they're lacking and where they need to skill up and improve. And if I think it's, I give people one benefit of the doubt. Yeah, so you say like if there's,
Absolutely.
you say, look,
Very important.
not performing, here you are. Here are the things where you're struggling, and then you are open questions. Why? What is it that you're struggling with? And sometimes you just don't. You don't always know. And
Yeah.
yeah, just need to take it from there. I think the thing I've also found is that equally, it's not. You can always get someone who you think has got on paper has all got
Right
all the
skills.
technical knowledge and all the skills, and they probably do have it. But if they don't gel with the rest of the business, then there's a struggle there as well. And actually, ironically, some of the best people I've had have not had the skill sets, but they've been willing to learn. So I think it's
And gel.
yeah, and gel. And I think, so I had someone at I mean, I wasn't direct, but who I pulled into the team at previous company at DCC, and hadn't sold physical product, but had such a good mindset for digital marketing and everything. And she smashed it, and she was really good.
Brilliant.
And
Yeah, I've
and then
always
moved on and
personally,
upwards. And I think, and you have people like that equally. A guy who did head of digital technology at Deckers, who had not done digital e-commerce integrations, but he had the right mindset and curiosity to learn and ways of working, and again did a great job. So sometimes it's about attitude. And I think if the attitude, you got, it's about saying, what are you going to do to change your attitude? Because if you don't know enough, go and learn.
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, right from my start of the career, and I've always believed two factors: a simple X and Y matrix, willingness to learn and ability to perform.
Yeah,
These are two different skills, and you need to have the right combination. Willingness is always very important. Skills can be developed, willingness cannot be developed. You have to find that first and foremost.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that's
And I think
precisely
the
what
other
you're
thing
saying
I
as well,
find
in
as
other
well, if you're
words.
building teams, is if you're in a business, I've always said in digital, there are three, there's a third in the business. Before you recruit anyone, there's a third, when you're doing digital transformation, there's a third of the business who can't wait. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, great, digital transformation, I can't wait.
Yeah.
You get the third then who are a bit more, when you're more senior, who are a bit more seasoned and go, look, actually, okay, this is great, but I'm a little bit cagey, you can persuade me. And that's fine. And then the third who are just like, not worried, not interested. So if you can get some of those people from the third who are really keen, and they're normally in customer service or operations or in maybe even in finance, they're people who are just curious to want to learn and do things different. And then you can sometimes get those people into your teams and business, and that's very good for the succession planning for business as well. You've got people moving around, and I think
Absolutely.
those are the willing people that you said,
Absolutely.
but they need the
Absolutely.
ability to perform. But you've seen their keenness; you could teach them to perform, but their willingness is there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's always the first and foremost quality for building a team. Now, of course, no conversation today goes without talking about one buzzword, and you know what I'm referring to.
Two letters.
Two letters, yeah, yeah, of course. The effervescent, the big hype thing right now is the AI. What do you think, where it is going, where it's going to lead? How can businesses put it to the right use without burning a hole in their pocket in terms of time and effort and cost?
Well, I do think there's been a democratization of AI. So if you're not, so I
Yes,
think my view is that if I think every business, if you ignore AI at your peril, but I would also state, so there's ways within the business you can use Gen AI, the Gen AI element, which is obviously how can you get better at the existing things that you do and make them faster.
correct.
Email marketing, content creation, SEO management. You can easily get a Gen AI tool to help you improve and focus on those things. From an investment perspective, I have a view that digital technology partners, you should be looking at digital technology partners who, if they want to stay in business, need to be improving the product that they sell and that you've got existing. So if you've got, so looking at how you can use those. So if you've got an ECRM, a CXP platform, if they'll probably be presenting to you or new customers, hey, we've got this new great agentic AI thing that we've got built in here.
Yeah.
So they should be doing that. You've got a PIM, that AI thing that improves and helps you create good. You should be using existing platforms they should
Correct.
be doing things so then you work out which bits you use. So why don't get any? Certainly wouldn't go and buy anything AI off the shelf as a result unless it added value. I think if I was thinking in e-commerce and the areas that I think it's going to shift and change, I do think agentic AI. And again, actually, the other one I go for is chat technology, CX platforms.
Yeah, of
There's
course.
definitely agentic AI improvements
Huge.
you can do there. Yeah, huge
Yes.
opportunities there. So but again, if I was going to invest, probably look at anything in e-commerce right now, I'd be really curious about conversational commerce and where the Gen
Yeah.
AI elements are with that.
So let me throw a bit of a case study at you. Let's
Yeah,
say you are consulting for a 50 million pound B2B business in the industrial power tool space, and they're looking for some advice on how to go about doing AI. What would be your discovery process and what would be your suggestive roadmap? Of course, that will change depending upon various factors in the discovery. But let's take a few assumptions and then go from there. How would you approach this whole thing?
I think goes back to what I said before. You do a discovery process. You said you'd look at the existing customer base and how they're working with you. I think you look at the existing technologies. So if you're a manufacturer and you're selling online, I presume you're going to have a PIN. Yeah. So I think I'd be
Yeah,
spending my time looking at how can I leverage, how can I improve. I'd be looking at the product and data I've got there just to see how can I use. You're talking about kind of using AI with it. That would be the
correct.
opportunity for me. I think you'd be looking at you've got loads of data sources if you're a manufacturer. Customers want
Absolutely.
to know, they want to be able to know what products, the information on these products. If you can find a way of harnessing, improving that product data, improving the product data you've got there, the information from sales teams, the spec sheets, all the specifications that you've got to pull that in and find some way of AI, one, to improve the product information that's presented, and then use it in a conversation in a way to help pricing configurators, but help build out a basket with them. You'll be in a hugely good space to do that. I think that's more around product information, and then obviously beyond that, you probably want to be looking at your customers. I presume if they're a manufacturer, they might be selling the same things again. How
Distributors.
can I do report? How can I use AI to improve my repeat ordering process and make it and do cross sell upsell from it? And those are the two areas I probably want to. You want to do some discovery on because you're not harnessing what's already there. You're looking at ways of
Yes,
improving what's already there. You're not trying to add something new.
absolutely. And basically address all the low-hanging fruit, which is
Yeah,
basically the product data enrichment and improving the customer service side as well.
yeah, yeah.
CSR, conversational
Absolutely.
chat. Because a lot of times, the majority of the queries from the B2B space are price and availability, delivery times, and
Yeah.
where is my order, and configurators, of course, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think
So you'd say,
then there's also that repeat order element to it of like,
of course,
how quickly can I reorder what I need? Are you going to tell me when I need it? How are you going to use AI to work out what else might I need?
absolutely,
And that's where it goes to that that incremental opportunity. If you can add that into the journey, then it'll probably make the sales team's job a lot easier because they won't be dealing with Wismos, whereas my orders and things as much, and there'll be a lot of you can focus productivity. I think AI brings productivity if you do it right for
absolutely. But
existing
there's
roles and for existing tech.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course. But there's a lot of talk that AI is going to lead to a lot of displacement of jobs as well. What's your take on that?
But yeah, I think there's a mix of it. I think it's going to take away jobs and create them. Or adapt ones, because I'd use an
Yes,
example right now. I use this example, having gone in as a consultant and into other businesses and looked at CXPs and email marketing platforms, and all of them are really, most of them are pretty good. Most of them are pretty good.
yeah, most of them are fairly
They're
standard
great. They're
actually.
great, but they've got all these
Yeah,
functions that 80% is not used.
yeah, absolutely.
So you don't need to get rid of that person to go, if you did that now and you have a agentic AI that tells you your segment without you going doing loads of data mining and then helps you create the creative to then do a personalized email campaign to that segment of customers who are propensity to buy a new pair of trainers because of blah blah blah, and then the personalized content is done there without you having to go and do a brief, because you can use AI to do that. You can just speed up what you do and do all the things in that platform that you didn't do before because you didn't have the time to. So I don't think it
Yep.
replaces in some locations. Obviously, there are going to be situations where it will replace customer agents and people who are doing where's my orders and I want to pay my
Yes.
invoice and things. You can replace those, but then there are going to be new jobs that we don't know about that are going to come along.
Absolutely.
Because I
Absolutely.
saw something recently where someone said it's like the Industrial Revolution. Everyone thought, "Oh my God, now my job's going. I can't, I can't shell these peas or something I'm making." And actually,
Yeah.
what it does, it just creates loads of other jobs on the line because you're industrializing it, and so I think things will come. I think, and I think
That
you'll
is
see
very
business models
interesting.
shift and change. So I don't know what's happening at Gymshark, for example, but you've got, there's a redundancies happening there, but they're creating new jobs now. Are those new jobs, AI jobs? I don't know, but
Yeah.
you don't know. So I think that's going to happen more.
I heard a very interesting quote the other day, and somebody said, AI is not going to replace your marketing guy, but the marketing guy with AI knowledge is going to replace the marketing guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you don't,
So,
if you're resistant to the change of what comes, it's an opportunity.
exactly.
I think it's a great opportunity for anyone to do their job more effectively and be more
Yeah, no,
productive.
absolutely. Okay, David, a few very rapid fire kind of a questions.
Yeah.
Digital tool that you would highly recommend.
Okay. Well, outside of the Chat GPT, which I like, Perplexities is the best one for me. Anyway, I like that.
Perfect.
I really like built. I mean, it's more of a kind of built with Appalizer is this tool which allows you to see what technologies and what everything
Built
is built
with. Yeah.
with
Yeah.
does that. It's better than Appalizer, and it's
Yes.
great because if you want to go and understand the infrastructure of a business, it's a really good way. And certainly if you're consulting or doing something else, and if you know the business
Absolutely.
well enough, you can go, well, I understand. Oh, they've got that and they've got that. You can see if they've got too many technologies. Goes back to my point.
Yep.
Why have you got
Absolutely.
why have you got like 3 A/B testing tools in there? So I mean, there might be old bits in there, but
Old
yeah,
tools. Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, yeah.
I love that tool.
Perfect. Most overrated trend in e-commerce today.
Most overrated trend.
Yes.
That's an interesting one. Overrated trend at the moment, probably. Oh, I don't know that one.
No, that's all
I
right.
always, I'm
That's
always,
all
I'm
right.
always, I'm not cynical because I always try and believe the best in everything. Like I still think we're away from the multiverse. Not multiverse. Yeah, the
I
metaverse.
think metaverse, I think that was overrated, but again, I think the all the
Won't be
dust
soon.
around that is completely settled down.
Yeah.
It's a bit far from coming back again, unless until the devices, the hardwares become more matured and lighter.
I do worry about subscriptions and things like that because I think that was such a big thing for a while. But I think there's a subscription fatigue that people are getting at the moment. So I
Yes,
love subscription modeling, but it's something that whether it's sustainable for
absolutely.
most businesses because
Yeah.
yeah,
And most ridiculous thing you've ever heard a consultant pitch.
I didn't most ridiculous thing. Oh my goodness, I can't
Any
have to think about.
consultant, I'm sure you must have come across loads of businesses who've been given some really bad advice, some really ridiculous things, and you might have said, "Oh
I
God,
think the
why
thing
did you?"
that the thing that we maybe it says to turn this around to something because I've heard lots of
Sorry.
so many pictures of things. I'm
Yeah.
quite cynical, so I think the thing that's disappointed me the most from a technology thing that we put in was probably trying to get that marketing mix attribution modeling in, and it was really I love it was a great pitch. We were able to track all your retail media and your out of home and
Yep.
etc. and all those things there, and it was very exciting. It took a lot of time and effort to try and get it done with Deckers, and it was just it was so hard to do and manage the incrementality. It was really disappointing. That was something I really wished I really wanted to work, but it just didn't.
I can imagine. I think this has been absolutely phenomenal, David. It's been really wonderful having this chat. We are now nearing the completion. We've actually completed 51 minutes. That's quite a bit, really. Wow.
You
Didn't
can cut
know
out the
where
bits
that
where
flew
I
off.
kind of just sat there not saying anything about like.
Of course. Okay. One last piece of advice that you would want to give to a digital transformation leader, somebody who's starting off and do something about the future of commerce. Anything around that?
I think just one of the things I've been banging on about is for all the noise and the choppy waters above and everything happening. I think I think with AI coming in, never more important than ever to focus on your quality of your data and your content data than the actual product data. I think because if it's not good enough, you're really going to get screwed by what happens with AI, because conversational commerce is coming, and if you haven't got the right information and the information there to help deliver that, never mind your customer data and stuff, which customer data is always a pain in the ass. It's
Of
15,000
course.
customers. Product and content data is going to be, to me, is super, super important. You've got to have a product and content data strategy. And that would be for me going into any business at any point, is what are you doing there on that? I think is really important, because I think it's it's becoming really important within, especially with Google Gemini AI conversation and Claude and all the other
Yeah,
things that are there. It's
absolutely,
coming. You
absolutely.
look at Shopify with their big, they're talking now about buying shopping within. I mean, look, it's
ChatGPT
smoke and mirrors, but you're not going to do any of that if you haven't got good information, product
content.
information.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Completely agree with that. David, this has been absolutely amazing. And I think I would really like to explore a few of the subjects with you. For example, a little element around ERP, a bit more deep dive into digital transformation, but that's for another day.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to thank you so much for your valuable time and your wonderful wisdom around your digital transformation journey and your pieces of advice. Thank you so much, Journey. Thank you, listeners, for listening to this podcast patiently. I'm sure you would have loved it as much as we enjoyed having recording this conversation. Thank you so much. See you on the next episode.